Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something fascinating. It's this paradox at the heart of high-level criminal life.
A really terrifying one, actually.
Exactly. The moment you actually succeed, you build that empire of wealth and power,
hmm
that's the moment you can't leave.
The door just slams shut behind you, and all that cash, all that success.
It becomes the chain. The very thing you were working for becomes the thing that traps you.
It really is the ultimate set of golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
I mean, probably the most heavily fortified handcuffs in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the corporate version where, the worst thing that happens is you lose a bonus or some stock options.
Right.
Here, the penalty for trying to slip those cuffs off is it's life in prison
Perfect.
or worse. So today we're going way beyond the headlines to look at the forces, both psychological and economic, that made it just about impossible for the people we've seen on the Connect to walk away.
And they knew they should. That's the crazy part. They could see the end coming.
They could.
I'm going to be focusing on the internal side of this, the psychology. The addiction to the status, the sheer terror of losing this identity they've built, and also this incredible optimism bias, this belief that they, personally, were the one who could beat the odds.
And I'll be digging into the hard math, the rational calculations that kept them in the game. From an economic view, retiring didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a catastrophic business failure. We're talking about the investment, the pipelines, the market share,
Mm-hmm.
and why walking away from seven-figure incomes felt like financial suicide.
And this isn't just, a story about the underworld. This is a really intense study of human motivation when the stakes are as high as they can possibly get. I think you'll find the insights here are, well, they're valuable for anyone who's ever been in a high-pressure environment.
Mm-hmm. It's the math of greed plus the psychology of denial. And in this arena, the results are fatal.
Okay, so where do we start?
Let's start right where the handcuffs are forged. The economics, the money, the sheer financial scale of these operations created this completely distorted baseline for what a normal income even is.
So any legitimate job, anything paid by the hour or even a yearly salary, it just looks like a joke to them.
It's an absurdity. And you have to remember, many of these guys came from nothing, real scarcity. So for them, that first rush of cash wasn't just an improvement.
No, it was an explosion. It completely redefined what was possible in their world.
Exactly. Let's just, analyze the scale of return on one product, because this is where the speed of the money becomes just blinding. Take pure Colombian cocaine.
Okay.
The sources break it down. The cartel's cost to manufacture and source that kilo, that's about 2 pounds, easily fits in a small bag.
Right, very portable.
The cost to them is maybe around $2,000.
$2,000 for a kilo. Okay, that's our starting point.
That's the baseline. Now, you get that same kilo across a few borders, get it into the United States. What do you think that sells for, wholesale?
Oh, I mean, I know it's a huge jump. $30,000.
$35,000 to $40,000. And if you have a really sophisticated pipeline that can get it to, say, London or Madrid,
Yeah.
you could be looking at $60,000, maybe even $70,000 for that same kilo.
Wait a minute. So from a $2,000 investment, you're getting a return of, let's just use the low number, $35,000.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I'm doing the math here, a 1,700% markup, minimum.
It's not a profit margin. It's, as you said, a redefinition of value. And that is what makes walking away a financial catastrophe in their minds.
You can't unsee that kind of profit.
You can't. One of the old school guys from Miami from the 80s, he made a really interesting point. He said the margins were so high back then that moving just 100, maybe 300 kilos,
Yeah.
that was enough to make a fortune that would set you up for life.
Right, because the purity was high and the price was astronomical.
Exactly. And he contrasted that with today's market, where the volume is way higher but the prices are generally lower. He figured someone now would have to move maybe 2,000 kilos just to match the profit he was making on a much smaller operation back then.
But what stands out to me there is the speed of it all, the velocity of the wealth. You could become a millionaire off of just a few successful runs. That has to set a psychological hook that's almost impossible to get out.
It's the lottery effect.
Mm.
And for the young guys, the ones coming from nothing,
Yeah.
it felt like liberation. We heard from that 22-year-old pot trafficker.
Oh, yeah.
He was making $5,000 a week. And he said he felt like he hit the fucking lottery.
And his first thought wasn't, I'll save this. It was, I never have to work a real job again.
Never again. He went from zero to what he saw as complete financial freedom in just a few months.
And that just fundamentally changes your whole perception of effort versus reward, right? I mean, why would you even think about getting a student loan or, working your way up a corporate ladder when you can pull in that kind of money every single week?
It's not even a consideration. And it's not
Huh.
just the high-end cocaine trade that does this. The same gravitational pull is there at every level. We heard from that major marijuana trafficker who did a calculation.
Mm-hmm.
He realized he was leaving an extra $1.5 million a year on the table.
$1.5 million
Yeah.
just left on the table.
By only operating locally. He wasn't scaling up to move his bulk product out of state where the prices were much higher.
So his decision to expand wasn't about greed, not really. It was framed in his mind as a rational business decision to correct a massive inefficiency.
It was purely rational. He saw state legalization coming. He knew his local market was about to get killed, so he decided to scale up and move thousands of pounds to the East Coast. It
Yeah.
was about making millions before that opportunity was gone forever.
It's just the numbers are staggering at every level. Even the counterfeiter, a single person printing fraudulent stuff, was pulling in $35,000 a week
$1 million a year business.
from his basement. So you're the CEO of your own criminal enterprise, clearing over $1 million a year. How do you ever go back? How do you sit down for a job interview for a $60,000 a year salary? You can't. The worlds are just too different.
I can't. And this brings us to a perfect case study of this trap, of a pipeline that's just too big to close. Eric Norrie.
Right.
His operation was so massive, so sophisticated, that it only stopped when the federal government literally, physically blocked his ability to move money. It wasn't his choice.
He didn't retire. He was forced out. It was a logistical chokehold.
That's the perfect term for it. The feds forced him out only after they intercepted 2 huge cash shipments he was trying to move out of the country. The first one was somewhere between $3 and $5 million.
Cash.
Just cash. And then they got another one for $1.8 million. But here's the crucial part. They intercepted the cash, the profits. They never actually got their hands on his marijuana.
So wait, his actual supply chain, the movement of the product, was still working perfectly.
Flawlessly. Right up until the moment he couldn't get paid anymore. The supply chain was resilient, but the financial engine seized up because the government figured out how he was laundering the money, and they cut it off.
Which proves the point. He wouldn't have stopped. He probably couldn't have stopped. The machine just demanded that it keep running.
Exactly. The arrest was an operational failure forced on him from the outside.
And psychologically, what he did next is the ultimate proof of the golden handcuffs, isn't it?
It really is.
He didn't just walk away from the gray economy. He immediately pivoted. He started financing the boys in the pain clinics. He just became the money guy.
He just reallocated his risk. He had the capital, he had the network, he had the high-level management skills. So he took all that operational infrastructure and just pointed it at a new, slightly less visible, but still very high-return gray market.
He went from drug kingpin to, like, a shadow venture capitalist.
Yeah. A total exit was never on the table. The sheer scale of his capital and his established identity as this high roller, it demanded he stay in the game, just in a different part of the casino.
So if the financial scale forges the handcuffs, the lifestyle is what snaps them shut. That money creates a dependency that's so much dumber than just being comfortable.
Right. That's the demand side of the economic equation. Once you start generating that kind of high-velocity income, your expenses, your cost of living just explodes. And often, that's intentional.
It has to. It's about credibility. It's what we call the status economy. You have to perform your success because it's a signal of power, of trust, of reliability. I keep thinking about that crack pusher from Harlem. He talked about his wholesale connect, the guy above him, who always wore these suits that cost $1,500, $2,000.
Yeah.
And he said he felt he had to buy suits in that exact same price range. Not because he wanted to, but just to keep up.
That's not a luxury purchase. That's a non-negotiable operational cost. It's like paying for a warehouse. If you show up looking cheap, you're signaling that you're unstable or your product is bad or that you're vulnerable, and none of that helps a high-risk transaction go smoothly.
It's the bling tax. We saw it with that same guy rushing out to buy the green Lexus as soon as he heard Jay-Z rap about it. Your wealth has to be tied to the cultural status symbols of the moment, the Acuras, the Lexuses, whatever. You have to look the part.
And for some, that part becomes their entire identity. Like the pimp from Las Vegas, he didn't see himself as managing prostitutes.
No, he was a gentleman of leisure.
A gentleman of leisure who had classy women. The real reward for him wasn't even the money. It was the social role, the status, the way it made him see himself. He was addicted to the identity of being that guy.
But that high-status, high-cost lifestyle, it inevitably becomes a financial black hole. That
Yeah.
high-risk income is matched by just insane high-velocity spending. And sometimes it's just destructive spending, and it creates massive debt.
And that creates the impossibility of downward mobility. That's a huge psychological weight. Once you've been at the top of that world, dealing pure Colombian products, selling it on the street for $100 a gram, living in that reality, how do you ever adjust to the sheer mediocrity of a normal life?
You can't. Going back to a job where your income is measured by the hour, it feels like a betrayal of who you've become. It's culturally and economically just untenable.
And very often, the lifestyle itself creates these huge financial drains that force you to keep earning at that level. The former fraudster.
Yeah, he was making a ton of money from prescription
A
fraud.
ton. But he admitted he blew 100 grand in 6 months easy on his own habit, daily Roxys and heroin.
And that's such a critical point. The substance abuse that often comes with this life isn't just a personal problem. It becomes a massive operational cost.
A huge one. The addiction creates this constant, desperate, immediate need for more cash. And that ties the person right back to the criminal activity. They have to keep the volume high just to feed their own habit and keep functioning. The drug use doesn't make them want to quit. It makes them need the crime more.
It's a devastating cycle, isn't it? A high income funds the high-risk lifestyle,
Yeah.
which includes habits that are self-destructive,
Right.
which then demand even more high income. It just locks the handcuffs tighter and tighter.
And when those financial pressures get too big, the consequences aren't just foreclosure or bad credit. They're fatal. We looked at that extreme case with the mobsters killing over debt.
Right.
A mob associate told the story of a guy being killed because he owed someone $250,000. It just shows that in that world, failing to pay a debt isn't a civil matter. It's a life or death operational decision.
So these debt cycles, they demand you keep operating, you keep earning, just to stay alive.
The second you slow down, the sharks start circling. The debt, the enemies, the expectations, they all catch up. And that raw existential fear just pushes them right back into the game, and it completely overrides any rational thought about quitting.
So beyond the money, beyond the lifestyle, maybe the most powerful handcuff of all is just the identity itself, the psychological cage where the quote-unquote straight world just stops making any sense at all.
It's almost impossible for us on the outside to really grasp how total that immersion is.
Yeah.
When your entire world, your friends, your income, your moral code is criminal, leaving means becoming a refugee in a country you don't even recognize.
It's the comfort of the criminal world. And it was so surprising to hear that Irish-American gangster say that he found prison easy.
Yeah, that was a stunning admission.
He said he was shoved into the reality fast when he got out at age 37, because up until then, he'd never had to deal with any normal adult stuff. No car insurance, no mortgage, no 9 to 5.
It's such a profound point. The criminal life, with its instant, untaxed cash, it lets you bypass the entire bureaucratic structure of being an adult. And so, ironically, prison, with its rules and its clear hierarchy, it offered a structure he understood.
Whereas the outside world was just chaos. It was terrifying. His whole life had been subsidized by crime, and that created this deep dependency on a system, even if that system was the Department of Corrections.
And others, they create their own system, their own moral justification for it all. We heard that Hell's Angels leader, how he drew a sharp line between being an outlaw and being a criminal.
Right, a gangster.
To him, he was living outside the law by choice. It's an ideological framework that justifies what they do, even when it's controlling the meth market in the Bay Area. It's not just crime. It's a way of life with its own code.
And that code allows them to feel a sense of honor, maybe even superiority over the straight world. They see it as weak or compromised. And that belief is an ideological lock. It prevents them from even wanting to exit.
And that lock is reinforced constantly by things like the mob code, that strict social contract that demands absolute loyalty no matter what. The mob associate who talked about the informant, Lou.
Yeah, other gang members were threatening Lou right in front of him, but they left the associate alone.
Right, because he was perceived as being in that life, and crucially, as sticking to the code of silence and loyalty.
So loyalty is the price of admission, the price of belonging. And the payoff is a sense of security and acceptance within that world. It's the very structure that the other gangster found so easy in prison.
And that identity, that loyalty, it just goes to war with any attempt to go legit. This is what we call the fight against legitimacy.
This is where pride just completely takes over and overrides any kind of rational self-interest, like the gang member who was facing 20 to life.
Yeah. And he refused all these plea deals that were, objectively pretty reasonable.
He turned the whole federal case into a game. He said it was fueled by spiteful pride. He saw taking a deal, cooperating, that was letting them break me.
And if you look at it mathematically, a plea deal is the rational choice. It gives you a clear end date. It could shave decades off your sentence. But psychologically, for him, it meant the total destruction of the only self he knew, the identity of the guy who never breaks.
So years, decades in prison was better than the shame of being seen as weak.
Exactly. And even when they do try to get out, even when they manage a successful transition, that old identity can be just too powerful. Think about the pot trafficker who retired and became a successful rapper.
On paper, that's the perfect exit strategy. You take your high-risk capital and you move it into a high-visibility but legitimate creative industry.
It should have been perfect. But the problem was his celebrity. His fame meant that everyone on the street, all his old clients, they still saw him as a dealer. They just didn't believe he was really out of the game.
So his reputation, the brand he built for being reliable and having good product, it followed him.
It became this inescapable brand. He was forced back into dealing hand-to-hand, he said, just because the demand created by a celebrity was so relentless, people trusted his name.
His success in one world made it impossible to truly live in the other. If the world sees you as a kingpin, even if you're trying to be an artist, you're still the kingpin.
The very trust he had built in the criminal world,
Yeah.
which is the most valuable currency you can have, it just completely negated his ability to retire.
Okay, so let's shift from the internal cages to the external ones, the practical, logistical things that make it so hard to just walk away. Because even if you manage to break that psychological tie, the shadow corporation you've built, it's not so easy to just shut it down.
It's the operational entanglement. You're not just one person. You're the center of a whole network of debts, loyalties, supplier obligations. It's a web.
And those supplier obligations seem like one of the stickiest parts of the web.
Absolutely. The Detroit Kingpin is a perfect example. He found a new, better supplier, better product, better price. But even after he made that smart business move, he still had to keep paying a cut to his original partner.
Danny, right. The guy who was high up in the Juarez cartel.
The very same. So he was basically paying a kind of criminal alimony, enforced by one of the most powerful cartels in the world.
And if he tried to stop paying?
There were threats. There were plots against his life. You can't just send a letter saying, I'm terminating our business relationship to a cartel boss. That obligation is permanent. It's rooted in a power structure you have no control over.
And at the same time, law enforcement is getting so much better at making sure there's no real escape because of the paper trail.
That is the core of the operational trap now. We heard that incredible story of the trafficker who got a huge sentence for possession with intent to distribute.
Even though he was never caught with a single gram of product.
Not a single gram. His entire conviction, his whole sentence, was based on a co-conspirator's ledger they found in a purse. And that ledger detailed the movement of 580 kilos.
So in the courtroom, that piece of paper was the legal equivalent of 580 kilos of cocaine.
Exactly. The system is so sophisticated now, just being part of the conspiracy, just leaving behind the documentary evidence. That's enough. They don't need the physical drugs anymore.
And the traffickers know this. They know how good the surveillance is.
They're highly aware. They talk about things like Stingray technology to track their phones. They know they're being watched. And they also know how hard it is to clean their money.
Right. Even if you open a legitimate business, say a sneaker store, and you're selling 20 grand worth of shoes a month and paying your taxes, the feds can still come knocking.
And they will. The IRS, the DEA, they'll demand to know where your startup capital came from. And if you were committing crimes when you started that business, those funds are tainted forever. Any attempt you make to go legit is built on a rotten foundation, and they know it.
But on the psychological side of these obstacles, there's the agonizing cost of protecting people you care about. Exiting often means someone has to take the fall.
And that forces an impossible choice. We saw it with the Virginia Kingpin. He accepted a 32-year sentence. 32 years.
Which was the low end of his guideline, but still, it's a lifetime.
It's a lifetime. And he only took that deal after he made sure his wife and his family got full immunity.
He chose to absorb all of it, all the punishment. It was the only way he could get his family out of the web.
It's a profound moral calculation.
Yeah.
He was trapped between saving himself and saving them, and he sacrificed his own freedom to execute their exit plan.
And we can't forget just the raw physical and emotional toll this life takes, the account from the Sicario. The hired assassin.
Yeah.
He described his life as being filled with desvelos, sleeplessness and miedos, constant fears. And he said he had to normalize the sight of death and war. It was just El pan de todos los días, the daily bread.
Just to be clear, a sicario is a professional killer for the cartels. That life requires a level of hypervigilance and psychological hardening that it's hard to imagine.
And once you've lived in that state for years, how do you just turn it off? How do you go back to a normal life where things are quiet? It must feel not just boring, but terrifyingly unsafe.
That high-stress state becomes your new normal. And the price of admission to that life is the permanent warping of your whole emotional landscape. You can't just go back.
So all of this, the stress, the money, the danger, it all leads to this very specific, almost delusional mindset. It's what we call optimism bias and high-stakes denial.
It's this core belief that even though the statistics are overwhelming, the odds of getting arrested or killed or betrayed, that you personally are the one brilliant exception to the rule.
Exactly. And you see it in the stories they tell themselves to make the risks feel smaller. Like the car thief. He convinced himself that the luxury car lots didn't even care that he was stealing from them.
Right, because they were just insurance write-offs.
It's a fascinating narrative. He makes the victim a faceless insurance company, not a person. He tells himself the loss is already priced in, and that makes the crime feel low risk, almost sanctioned. It just quiets the guilt and the fear.
But that's a story. The reality is what we see in those smuggling runs. The pure desperation and denial. The guy driving alone in the pissing rain, he's been on the road for 15 hours, he's speeding with 30 pounds of weed in the car. That level of recklessness, it comes from pure exhaustion. It's tunnel vision. The only thing in the world that matters is getting to the finish line and getting paid. All rational risk assessment just goes out the window.
And sometimes that denial crosses over into something even darker, into truly self-destructive behavior. It reflects this mindset of having absolutely nothing left to lose.
Like the former skinhead gang member.
Yeah, describing running straight at a guy who was emptying a clip at him.
He said that at that point in his life, dying in action, dying with some kind of perceived honor, it seemed better than just continuing the miserable, trapped life he was living.
That kind of nihilism, it's the ultimate psychological trap. Because if you truly believe you have nothing to lose, then risk doesn't exist anymore. And that makes you incredibly dangerous to yourself and everyone else, and it makes it almost impossible to ever seek a real way out.
Which brings us back to that prison guard's insight, that so much of the violence comes from people who feel they have nothing to lose. This mindset only shatters when the system forces a totally different kind of choice on you.
The calculation of cooperation.
Right. This is where the cold, hard, transactional reality of the legal system just smashes through that wall of honor and denial.
And those moments are just terrifyingly clear, aren't they? A line is drawn in the sand, freedom on one side, a life sentence on the other.
Look at the drug dealer who got arrested. The DEA made him a crystal clear offer. No ambiguity.
Help us get this cartel member, Maria.
And you walk out that door today, no felony record, nothing. His lawyer confirmed it was a real deal. The choice was simple. Give us information, which has transactional value, or get years in prison.
And that's where the concept of honor just gets put under unbelievable pressure. We saw it with the mob informant. At first, he refused to be a rat. He believed in the code.
He held on to it.
Right.
But under the relentless pressure of the system, and probably seeing the hypocrisy of it all, guys like Dom killing someone over a $250,000 debt, he eventually flipped.
The calculus of self-preservation just finally overrode the perceived honor of the street.
Because the system gives that honor zero currency. That same informant, he saved a judge's life by tipping off the FBI. Later, when he got arrested on a minor charge, he thought he had some leverage.
And he had none. The FBI agent just dismissed him.
It's a harsh lesson. The system only values one commodity: information. Your honor, your past deeds. They're worthless at the negotiating table.
So if the system strips away that code, that honor, the only way out left is this radical internal shift, the final exit epiphanies.
These are the really rare moments that usually only happen in profound isolation with forced sobriety, where someone has a moment of extreme clarity and just redefines who they are.
The story of the man in the Spanish prison is just incredible. He gets sober for the first time in a decade, and he looks around at the other inmates, the people who were his peers, his community, and he has this sudden, absolute realization, I'm not like these people.
And that was it. That was the moment he rejected his entire former identity. It was the catalyst he needed. He threw himself into kickboxing, into training, anything to physically and mentally build a new self.
But it took being completely removed from his environment. It took forced sobriety. It took a total break from everything he knew for him to be able to do that.
That reconstruction of identity, the total and complete rejection of that old life, that seems to be the only way to truly cut the golden handcuffs. You don't just leave the game. You have to reject the entire foundation it was built on.
So when you put it all together, you see this whole complex cycle of entrapment. It starts with the money. That's this impossible financial upside that makes quitting feel like a stupid decision.
And that's followed by the psychological and social trap that makes a normal life feel meaningless or boring or just terrifyingly vulnerable.
The math of the profit demands you keep going, and the high-stakes world demands a high-status lifestyle, which makes coming down from that feel like a failure.
And the handcuffs aren't just cash. They're made of supplier obligations, of debt, and of a legal paper trail that can tie you to a conspiracy forever, even if you try to get out.
And through it all, the person becomes addicted, not just to the money, but to the identity, the status, the thrill of being the one who's beating the odds. And they push themselves past the point of no return because the fear of losing that self is actually greater than the fear of prison or death.
The empire they built demands their full, continuous participation. It owns them.
We should probably end with a final thought here, one that's less about the individual and more about the system that deals with them. We heard that really sharp insight from the longtime prison guard. He said, if you give inmates something valuable to lose, real parole chances, shorter sentences, actual job opportunities after release, you might see a lot less violence, a lot less reckless behavior.
Because if the system is designed to hand out sentences that are so extreme, life without parole, 50, 60 years, it effectively removes any hope of a viable future.
Exactly. So the provocative thought is this. Does our society inadvertently reinforce the criminal mindset? By making the consequences so final, do we ensure that the only rational way to act, inside or out, is as if you have nothing left to lose? Does the system itself make sure that the exit door, even if you find it, leads nowhere that could ever compete with the memory of that $35,000 week? That's something to think about.
Until next time.